The idea of creating a self-sufficient homestead can be exciting, but most people forget to consider how they can make money off their land. From livestock to handmade crafts, there are many ways to make money on a homestead. In this episode, you will learn the different ways to make money. Let's get growing. Hello, and welcome to the Purposeful Plant Podcast, the show that talks about growing a garden, a homestead, a healthy family, and most importantly, growing closer to God. I'm your host, Crystal Media, owner of the Red Ridge Farm Homestead, where our mission is to help women of faith find the courage to grow healthy food for their family while building a closer relationship with our Lord and Savior. If that's you, don't let the world hold you back. Pray, just plant. Hello, fellow growers. Welcome to the Pray, Just Plant podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Media, and today in Season 10, Episode 10, we're going to dive into ways to make money on your homestead. Some of these ways are going to be probably something you've thought of before. Maybe some ways will be different, but hopefully there's some different creative ways that can help you move from just the homestead into the purposeful life. Now, if you've been following me for a while and you've been listening to the Pray Just Plant podcast, then you know that I'm right about to mention the purposeful growing journey. This is going to be part of the purposeful life stage. That's when we're trying to make money from the things that we grow. We're trying to make a lifestyle beyond just the everyday. So let's quickly go through the 6 stages of the purposeful growing journey. Number 1 is just grow. If you're just starting out, this might be the stage that you're in and you're thinking, well, if I want to start a homestead, what are some ways that maybe I could create money so that I can help fund the homestead that I want, right? Well, that's what you're going to be figuring out in your just grow stage. You're going to figure out your why, your goals that you want for your homestead, and more. Then you have the purposeful kitchen. Anyone can homestead. Anyone can create purpose in their life. Anyone can break away from the systems, especially in the kitchen. We all have one, right? Next is the purposeful home. This is where you're branching out. Kitchen is the center, the heart of our home. So you're branching out into the home. You're creating management systems. You're creating a homemaking routine, which we just talked about last week. You're creating purpose in your home so that you can move outside and go into the purposeful garden where you're growing your own fruits and vegetables. The purposeful homestead where you're adding animals and maybe a little bit of permaculture design to your property so that you can grow even more. And last is the purposeful life. That's where you're bringing all of the things together and maybe even making an income. And we're going to talk about that today. Maybe you're in the first stage where you're just grow, or maybe you're in the kitchen or any of those stages. I'm not sure what stage you're in. Go check out a webpage that I designed that is going to walk you through the 6 stages. It's going to help you figure out what stage you're in, what things you need to accomplish, your action steps before you move on to the next stage, and more, just so that you can create that purpose in your journey. Maybe you're like me. You've got all the things. You're in the purposeful homesteading stage, and you want to create more. You want to create maybe an income from your homestead, or you want to expand and take your dairy to not only yourself, like I have a goat dairy, but to others. This episode is for you. So let's get into the about 10-ish creative ways that you can create an income or make money on your homestead. Living on the homestead can be a dream come true for so many people. However, the cost of maintaining one can quickly add up. True. What if I told you that you could turn your backyard into a lucrative business? Yes, you heard that right. Before I dive in, though, I want to say one important thing to you in the just growing stage, or you in the first stages, and you're thinking about this, but you're not ready for it, but you want to get there someday. I want to tell you one thing, and a lot of these things deal with land, but I want to tell you something that Joel Salatin said. This idea of homesteading is a lifestyle. So that means that if you're going to create money or a lucrative business, or you want to live off the land and create money from there, that lifestyle may not support the lifestyle you currently have, like the 2-car garage and all of the things. So you might have to change your mindset a little bit there. Read his book, You Can Farm, by Joel Salatin, and he will really go into that and explain that a little bit deeper. Another thing that he said, which I think is so important, is don't go in debt thinking about creating a homestead. Build up your savings first. build up and make a budget and create the ideas first. Create a business plan. Create all of the things before you dive into these creative ideas, or find a creative idea, but make a business plan for it first, and then build up a savings. Make a budget for yourself and your family, because you do not, one of the biggest things, a purpose. Creating purpose in your home is to not cause stress. We want joy. We want peace. We want to create a purposeful life that does not include debt. So just be thinking of that before you really dive into these ideas. Please take not only my advice, but Joel Salatin's advice before you step into a business, or before you buy the land, or before you jump off the cliff into this purposeful journey. Just take a few moments to think back. And if you're doing this making the money thing, make a business plan. And I have a resource that will help you out with that. Just go to the show notes and I will share that with you. So the first idea, the creative idea for making money on the homestead, is to start a bed and breakfast, which nowadays we kind of call that an Airbnb, right? If your homestead is located in a scenic or touristic area, you can turn your spare room or a guest house or the loft of your barn, or I don't know your situation, but an extra space. I've even seen where people here in Wyoming, at least, they bring in little campers, but they are sheep wagons, and they've come through history. That is something with Wyoming history of these people would travel with their sheep and live in a sheep wagon. It's a covered wagon, not just with the tarp thing, but with actual wood, and has a wood stove in it. All of the amenities, not a bathroom, of course. So there's many ways that you can create this on your homestead. Many people like to stay in homely environments rather than a hotel, and your homestead could provide that perfect escape for them. To make your bread and breakfast or Airbnb successful, you need to invest in maybe comfortable beds and quality linen, and provide your guests with delicious breakfast each morning. Maybe you don't go that far. Maybe you just still do the Airbnb, where you're creating a place that they can make their own food in, but you're still creating that place. I know my husband and I have tossed this idea around. I wasn't really sure about, inviting people into our home to eat food with us, but of course, if you're growing your own food, that might be a draw, but you need to look into necessary permits and licenses and insurance to run a successful bed and breakfast business. The other way that you could make money on the homestead would be to sell your excess produce. This is very simple as just a gardener, as a grower. I think one of the most obvious ways that you can make money on the homestead, when you are growing your garden and you have more than you can preserve, and more than, or even, we'll get to that in a little bit, selling some of your preserved stuff, or you have a small orchard, there's plenty of opportunities to profit from your abundance of fresh fruits. And one option is to sell your produce at a local farmer's market or through a CSA. That's called a community supported agriculture program. That's where people pay you ahead of time, and you promise that you'll fulfill maybe baskets every week full of produce. You can also consider selling your produce to local restaurants or grocery stores. This may require a bit more legwork to establish those relationships and negotiate prices, but it's very simple. One of the biggest things, and if you've been here a while and listened to me, you know that I love the concept of growing at least a garden from a market garden's point of view. I like the saving of space. I want to grow a lot in a small area. I want to grow enough to feed my family. I have a family of 5, and in that family of 5, I have 3 growing boys. So they eat a lot. So when I changed my garden from just a hobby point of view to a market gardener's point of view, I didn't really think of it from the profit side, but I thought of more, like grow more vegetables. They grow more in a smaller place than any regular hobby grower does. And that can be easily expanded to now you could add maybe a few more rows of green beans and a few more of this and a few more of that, so that you can take it to the farmer's market. This is a business that we are adding to our Red Ridge farmstead this year. My boys are getting older. My oldest son graduated this year. And one of the biggest things that I, as a mom and as a homesteader, as a person who wants to break away from the systems, I want to create a job, and I want to instill entrepreneurship in my kids. I told them, okay, my next youngest son is 16. And I said, why don't you two create a business here on the homestead? My oldest son, you can work around your college time. This can be done in the summer. To my middle son, you don't have to travel a lot. Maybe a few times we'll have to travel to a farmer's market or go to a restaurant, but it's not every day where you have to drive to a job. That's what they're doing. They're creating a farmer's market here on our homestead. And all we're doing is just growing a little bit more food and being a little more strategic about the amounts and the locations of our food. Another way in this also to maximize your profits is consider value-adding products such as jams and jellies or pickled vegetables and baked goods. These items not only allow you to use up excess produce, but they can also fetch a higher price than raw products alone. That's one of our goals. Our market garden is we may take fresh green beans this week. Well, next week, through that week, I'm going to take all those green beans and I'm going to can them and preserve them into maybe pickled green beans or canned green beans. And then we're going to take those to the market and sell those. If they don't sell, then I have plenty of green beans for my family and for myself, or vice versa. We take things to the market and they don't sell, then I just bring them home and I preserve them for myself. Selling excess produce is a great way to leverage productivity of your homestead and turn it into a profitable enterprise. And once you've established a loyal customer base, then you can go maybe into the next thing, which is hosting workshops and classes. Hosting workshops and classes can be a valuable addition to your homestead revenue stream. By sharing your knowledge and expertise with others, you can attract a new audience and potentially create a loyal following. You can teach a variety of topics such as gardening, canning, cooking with fresh produce. Consider partnering with a local chef or food bloggers to offer unique classes that highlight the benefits of locally sourced ingredients. In addition to offering in-person workshops, you can also create online courses to reach a wider audience. There's many platforms that you can do this. If you are just starting out and just learning, that's one way that I also help you, is because I do host workshops. I try to host a free workshop every month. You need to get on the newsletter to take advantage of that, but I announce every month a workshop that I'm doing and I share it with you. And then I create also classes that go into my membership area that teach you about growing and maybe dive into these topics that we're talking about right now. I mentioned a business plan. That's inside the membership area where I help you develop a business plan for your homestead. Business plan for homestead is totally different than a business plan for a brick and mortar business. We have different assets. We have different things we have to think about. So creating that is a little bit different. So I've taught a class about that. And you can do the same thing. Once you've learned something and once you get it as your foundation, then you can reach out and teach others. Remember the old adage, you can provide a fish for someone every single day, or you can teach them to fish and you will have fed that person for a lifetime. I have more creative ways to share with you. Now it is time for the tips and tricks segment where I share with you a few seasonal tips that I use here on the homestead. If it's happening here on the homestead, I want to share it with you to help you grow more on your growing journey. This week's tip is brought to you by the Planning Beyond the Harvest handbook. This handbook was designed to help you get your harvest onto your family's plates. We grow all this delicious food, and sometimes in the garden planning, we forget about the harvest and beyond the harvest. This workbook will walk you through the 5 steps that I use to get beyond the harvest. You can grab your copy at redridgefarm.org/resources. This week's tip is going to jump ahead a few seasons. We are just now tail end of spring and we're getting into the summer months. And right now is when we actually need to be thinking about our fall garden. Have you got a fall garden plan figured out yet? What are you going to plant? Well, usually the plants that are in fall are not planted in fall. They're actually planted in the later weeks or the middle of your summer. So your summer garden eventually turns over into your fall garden. So you need to be thinking about right now in your garden plan what you need to be buying seed for, what you may need to be already germinating in your home, as in starting seedlings, because cold hardy crops need a cool place to germinate. So you're not going to be able to germinate some of these cool hardy crops in your garden. Be thinking about, are you on the verge of needing to get something started so that you can have that fall garden you've been dreaming about? My tip for you is to start thinking about that fall garden today. back to creative ways to create an income on your homestead, whether you're in the planning stage or whether you are growing all the things and you just think, well, maybe I could do more, like selling your extra produce like we talked about previously. You are in the right place because we're going to talk about a few more ideas. Maybe you have established workshops or classes. You can easily start considering the next addition, which is renting out your land. Now, when I first read this, I thought, well, renting out my land, because that's what we do in Wyoming, is like we rent out our land to maybe someone else raise their horses on our place or someone else raise their cows. And we actually rent land to raise some of our animals on because we only have a certain amount of area. But actually, a better way that you could make money is to let other people use your property so that they may be able to host events or instructions, or maybe you've talked to that chef and he wants to really get into sustainable local products and you say, okay, well, come and teach your class here at my homestead. I will provide the food, you provide this, and we'll charge such and such, and you guys can make a partnership. And rent out your land can open up doors to many different things, but it's a great way to supplement your income and maintain a sense of community on your homestead. I think that is so important in our purposeful growing journey, is that we think of community. I think so many times we try to think that growing a homestead, being purposeful, is being self-sufficient. It is in a way, but I think it's more being community sufficient because we're trying to break away from the systems and be away from those. But when it comes to creating and growing your own food and creating purpose, this is something that can be done as a community, and your land can help with that. Your homestead can help with that, and you can make a little bit of money on the side. Continuing with that, you could do hands-on activities or offer agro-tourism activities. There's a local ranch just down the road from us that does a pumpkin patch every year. They grow a huge field of pumpkins. Yes, if you had a little bit of maybe extra area that you could grow some pumpkins, you could do a pumpkin patch, and that's where the people come out to your place and they pick pumpkins and they pay you to pick pumpkins. We go there as I took my kids when they were younger. They're all, of course, teenagers now. And, oh, Mom, why would we want to do that? She sets up a place where you can take pictures, and she sets up inside her garage. She has a little area where you can eat some snacks and buy the extra pumpkins, and you go out on a tractor ride and you just go pick pumpkins. It's a fun agro-tourism. It brings a lot of people from the city out into the land. There's other opportunities. You can go into, maybe you do farm tours or develop a petting zoo or pick your own produce events where people come out and help you pick, and they pay you to pick your produce, and then you give them like a basket of it or so, but maybe not everything that they picked. You can offer workshops like on soap making or cheese making or beekeeping, and it all already deals with what you have already on your property. There's lots of different agro-tourist ideas. I visit a flower picking place. It was so much fun. We got to pick so much to fill a vase, and we got to take home a vase. It was like $25 for the experience, and it was so much fun. And of course, I didn't do this with my guys. I went out with my friends, and I went with my sister and her little daughters, and it was fun. But there's so many different ways that you can do agro activities on your property, and they can be such learning experiences as well. If you have animals, then maybe it'll be the first time someone met a goat, or you could talk to them about goats, or so much more. The next thing goes right into raising livestock for profit. Raising livestock is an excellent way to diversify your income and make the most of your homestead. Not only can you sell meat, milk, with a dairy, right? Other animal products. I currently have a dairy here on the homestead. It's taken me about 5 or 6 years to establish it because I'm establishing a good foundation breed of animals. I sell my milk to people that like goat milk, and they use it for other products. I sell some of my goat milk to a lady down the road that makes cheese from my goat milk and sells it at farmers market. So I'm supplying another homesteader. She doesn't have to raise dairy goats. She raises meat goats, but she also wanted to attract different customers to her booth by incorporating cheese, but she didn't want to do the cheese, the milk side. So we've kind of teamed together. I don't have to go to market. I just sell the milk to her. She makes the cheese. That could be another idea. Maybe you have a dairy and you want to establish something more. Maybe you can get into those other products, animal products, and And of course, you can also sell live animals as well. I know when my goats just kidded last week, I have sold a few of the babies, and because I've established a good breed of La Manchas here in Wyoming, and people want to incorporate my livestock because they have a good foundation, they're good, well-built animals, and they want to start their own mini dairy as well. And I offer animals for sale every 2 years because I don't breed my girls every year, which can help you get into the next niche, which is to sell homemade crafts and goods. Once you've established a customer base with maybe selling your extra produce, selling the meat, selling your milk, all the animal side, all the growing side, you can start maybe selling crafts like making candles and scarves, or there's countless possibilities for crafting items to sell. You can even incorporate materials from your farm, such as maybe wool or honey, or add unique different touches. You can sell homemade goods. You can sell your homegrown and then preserved goods. There's loads of things that you could sell off of your homestead that could create a profit for you. And it doesn't even have to be the things that maybe you grow. Maybe you only use a part like honey, and maybe you use another animal part and make tallow, and you make a good whipped hand cream that you could sell at a farmer's market or sell online even. I mean, when you go into the goods and crafts, you can really get into, especially if it's something that could be shipped and is staple, not necessarily all the foods, but I've even heard of people selling meat in freezer boxes to people around the United States and selling consumer meats. So there's endless possibilities, especially when you think outside the box of just your local visitors, your local attractant. Maybe there's some things that you can craft or goods that you could sell that you could ship to people. The next thing would be rent out equipment. So a homestead takes equipment. Maybe you have a tractor that you use, or maybe you have a post hole pounder, or maybe you have such and such. I don't know all the equipment that you have. Maybe there's something that on your property that you had to rent out until you bought it. Well, maybe there's people around you that could rent from you. And remember, especially when we're establishing a homesteaded community, that yes, we can make a profit, as in moolah money, but sometimes the biggest advantage, I personally think, on a homestead and as a grower is that if you have one set of equipment and your friend down the road needs it, but maybe they have a big orchard and you don't, why not trade and barter? I think bartering for apples is just as important as bartering for money, personally, but that's just me. So think about those other things too. Sometimes creating money on your homestead doesn't actually have to be money, moolah. So we'll get into the next ways to create or make money on your homestead in just a minute, but now it is time for the Growing with God segment of this episode, where you and I dive into the Bible and learn more about our walk and the words of God. This week, we are going to be reading out of Deuteronomy 10:12 through 13. Now, we're going to take just a short break from our series on faith in action. This is a verse that I have been contemplating and meditating on for the past week. And it may seem like a very small verse, but I think this verse really packs a large punch, especially when we break down its pieces. And I encourage you to meditate on the word. Recently at my church, my pastor said that we need to not only just have time to read the word, but we need to meditate on it. We need to be thinking about it every day. Sometimes the word meditate gets misused, but I think in this instance, when it comes to God's word, it's that we spend time, our everyday time, when we have a few minutes, just thinking about a verse or thinking about something that we've read, and we try to internalize it. We don't just read it and move on. We try to think about it a little bit more deeply. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to read two short verses and we're going to meditate on them a little bit. So I'm reading Deuteronomy 10 verses 12 through 13. I want to give a little bit of context here. This is Deuteronomy. This is where Moses is giving this big long speech to the Israelites before they go into the promised land. And one of the things that God told Moses to tell the Israelites were these words. So verses 12 and 13. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to observe the Lord's commands and decrees that I'm giving you today for your own good. So when I first read this verse, one thing that really popped out to me was after the word good, there was a question mark. Why would there be a question mark for your own good? I think a little bit of it is it's asking them, do you remember the commands that was given to you when I said it earlier in the speech? The 10 commandments, right? The commands, the decrees that God gives them. There's more than the 10 commandments in this Deuteronomy speech. They're talking about how we treat widows. Moses tells them more on how you're supposed to treat someone who commits murder and how you're supposed to treat someone who does another sin or this sin and how the punishments are going to go, how they're supposed to govern themselves, how they're supposed to take over and conquer this land, but not this land. And all of those different commandments. So I think that question mark really pertains to that. Do you remember Lord's commands and decrees that I'm giving you today? Not that they are for your own good. That's not the question mark. The commands and the words of God are, of course, for our own good. But the question was to the Israelites, do you remember those commands? But what I want to meditate on today is a little bit deeper into 12. And there's 4 aspects of it. It says to fear the Lord your God, walk in obedience to him, to love him, and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. We hear this again Jesus says it in the New Testament as well. But why are they 4 different things? It was my question. Isn't walking in obedience serving? And isn't fearing the Lord the same as loving him? And I had to sit down and really think about these things. Why is Moses or God telling Moses these 4 different things? They can't be the same thing if they're 4 different things. If we look at it in grammar, there's commas between each one of them. There are 4 different aspects, different commands he is giving to the Israelites, giving to us. So let's break down the first one. Fear the Lord your God. Okay? In this instance, and in any instance when it talks about fearing the Lord, it's not for us to be shaking in fear, to be afraid. It's to show respect, show him as our Father, show respect to a loving Father. Okay, respect. We're going to get into that a little bit deeper. And then fearing, I thought tied into love. Well, how is love different? Isn't love also respecting? Well, I think it is in a way, but it's also different. We're going to go into that in another study. In the next verses, 14, it says, to the Lord your God belongs the heavens, even the highest heavens, the earth, and everything in it. So when we fear the Lord and we respect him, are truly what we're doing and what we should be doing in that respect is acknowledging who God is, acknowledging his power, acknowledging that this powerful God is on my side. And not that he is just God, but he is Lord of Lords. He is the one and only God. He is the Omega. He is also the beginning and the end. He is all knowing. He knows all. He knows the future. He knows the past. He knows all. So when we respect God in this way, when we see his power and we respect his power and we acknowledge that his power is true and just, and to fear him or to respect him means that we acknowledge that God is who he says he is. God is God. God is the ultimate God. And in that also means that if we accept and respect that God is God, God is who he says he is, then we can say that his word, right? It's his word, the Bible, is all of that too, because it is part of God. So then we can say that the words of God is just. We can say that the words of God are the beginning and the end. We can say that the words of God are powerful, are meaningful, are truth, Because when we respect God for who he is, then we respect what he says and what the Bible says for who and what it says because of who said it. I know that kind of sounds confusing maybe a little bit, but I think that really is deep down. That's why fearing the Lord your God is different than loving him. It's showing God that you see him for all that he is. And you respect who he is and who he says he is, and that you respect the words. When the Bible says that you should love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, you know that is truth. You know that is just. When the Bible says that sin is wrong, you know that that is true. You know that that is just. Because your respect for God and his power shows that you believe that everything he says in the Bible or everything that he does, the mantle of who he is who he is. You trust in that. You respect that. You respect who he is. Also in other verses where it says, who can be against you if God is beside you? That's showing that you see how powerful God is and that no one, not even Satan, can overthrow God. And that God, Jesus Christ, has already overthrown Satan and that you believe that. That is the respect, the fear that the Lord your God is asking of you. So that is something that I was meditating on this week, and I thought I would share it with you. Next time, we're going to dive into the other part, to walk in obedience to him. This verse may be small, this verse may be simple, but when we meditate on it and try to think of not only what this verse is trying to say, but what the Bible in all the other readings that you've done, what other thoughts you've had, what other verses you have read, and you tie that into this, then you can see that yes, fearing the Lord is different than loving the Lord. And we're going to talk about that soon in this short little break series from our Faith in Action series. If you've been enjoying the Faith in Action series, I promise we're going to get back to that, but I just wanted to take a short little break and get into this verse and really dive into it a little bit deeper, and also maybe help you in your study of the Bible and how you can learn to meditate on the Word of God, how you can bring them into yourself so that you can learn and understand, right? Fear, respect who God is. So I just want you to take a little bit of time this week to think about how powerful God is, how powerful God's words are, how they have affected your life, and how just and good our God is. So here we are. We're learning about different ways to make money on the homestead. We've mentioned using our extra produce, mentioned selling animals or animal products. We've mentioned trading our land or offering our land for rent or trading and renting our equipment. There's lots of different ways to make money on the homestead. So here are a few more. Maybe you could start a niche food business. If you have a passion for cooking and love experimenting with new recipes and starting a niche food business on your homestead could be a great way to generate income while doing something you love. The beauty of niche food business is that they allow you to tap into specific markets that value unique and handmade products. Think about the ingredients you have available on your homestead and consider what type of food products you could create. For example, if you have lots of fruit trees, you could make jams and jellies and preserves. If you have a garden with a variety of vegetables, you could create homemade salsa or pickled vegetables. The possibilities are endless, and you can get creative with your recipes to make them stand out from the competition. Once you have your recipes perfected, start by selling your products at local farmers markets or through online marketplaces. You can also reach out to local restaurants. Starting a niche food business requires a lot of work, but it can also be incredibly rewarding. Not only can you turn your passion for cooking into a profitable venture, but you can also help promote the local food movement and support sustainable agricultural practices. I think you're noticing a trend right here. All of these businesses can add on each other. Maybe you started the market garden thing and you're selling your extra produce. Then you slowly establish into this niche food business. So you're taking your extra produce, you're selling some fresh, and then you are selling some of it preserved in salsa or something. And then you're like, well, maybe I could add agro tourism to this, and you want to bring people to your farm. Well, instead of taking your produce out to the farmer's market, out to marketplaces, you could create a farm store on your homestead. Now you're selling the things that people already love. They're coming to you to buy it. And then you add, oh, you want to go through my petting zoo, or hey, it's pumpkin patch season. Why don't you go pick out a few pumpkins, or it's strawberry picking season. All of that can be added together and build on itself. And that kind of goes into the next thing too, which is offer farm to table dinners. If you're looking to add more value, more people coming to the farm, a farm to table dinner is great because you're producing the food, you are attracting customers, potential customers to this event. They're paying to try your food, like your fresh carrots or your fresh green beans or your grass-fed beef, whatever it is. They're trying your food, they're paying you for the experience of trying your food. And then as they're walking out the door, you can say, hey, guess what? I sell this at our farm stand every Saturday. Come on down and get more, and you can cook delicious food in your own home. So what is a farm to table dinner? It means creating a menu that features your farm's freshest ingredients, ideally picked the same day, and then you customize the menu according to the season and what's available. Make sure to include a variety of meats, vegetables, fruits, and herbs to showcase the diversity of your farm. This is a way for you to diversify your farm, also get people into really coming back to their roots, enjoying the outdoors, all of that. All of this can build on itself. So I want to thank you for joining me here at the Pray Just Plant podcast. I hope you have really found some things that will help you get into creating money on the homestead. And don't be afraid to think outside the box and try a few different methods to find what works best for you. And as the saying goes, the earth laughs and flowers. So go ahead and plant the seeds of your success. Think of things, that little seed that you might be thinking about, the tickling in the back of your brain. Maybe that's the niche for you. Maybe that's what you should be growing and you should be selling on your homestead. If you're new, I want to thank you for joining me today, and also welcome to the Red Ridge Farm Fellowship of Fellow Growers. You can join the newsletter and be apprised of every episode that comes out. I as well give out a free resource that helps with each stage of the growing journey. As I said before, I also host monthly workshops, so be sure to try to check out the newsletter. I don't spam you. I don't send you extra stuff. It's just to make sure that you get the information you want so that you can continue to grow on your growing journey. And as always, don't let the world hold you back. Pray, just plant.